Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Opera Colorado opens their season tomorrow with The Marriage of Figaro. Later, we meet with the cast and director at the Tattered Cover in LoDo, where we learn about their process for creating these characters in this familiar piece. But we begin tonight with Opera Colorado's general director, Carpenter. Well, I'm so delighted that we get to finally visit with you, because we missed visiting with you for your pre-season season, but this is going to be your season opener, The Marriage of Figaro.
Yes, we're finally here.
We're finally here. Well, tell me what was the thinking behind this season changing this way, in that you did the sideshow production in a time of year when you normally would begin your season, and now we're beginning your season in the beginning of the year? Well,
part of it is the fact that with our season so spread out, when we had a production in November and then we sort of go away until February, and then we're back at the end of April, early May, there was so much downtime in the season where people sort of forget about you, you know, and then trying to ramp up everybody's energy and excitement about the next production. And we thought by compacting the season, we have a thread of energy now going. We have a real season. It's opera season in Denver. And so we're really excited about that aspect of it. But yet, last fall, we wanted to maintain a presence for the city, for people who wanted to come and see some opera, but also for some new audience. And so the sideshow activity that we did here on the 4th floor of the Opera House was very much part of maintaining a presence in the city, but also giving something new to an audience.
I have to say that I was so enthralled with that evening. I had such a good time, and I was able to share it with someone who'd never been to the opera before. And she also had a wonderful time.
That's great. That, you know, that whole evening was about creating something intimate, that it's almost touchable in so many ways. Where when you're here at the Opera House, in the Ellie Caulkins Opera House, you know, it's a little bit more formal in terms of the traditional set, and everybody is, you know, out in front of the stage. We're there in that 4th floor space. You were surrounded by the artists and so forth.
Yes, I mean, you actually become part of the show in many ways for that particular performance.
Exactly.
I loved it so much. I hope you add that as part of your regular programming.
We're certainly planning it for this fall.
Oh, good, good. We'll have to come back for that. But now we're beginning your main season with The Marriage of Figaro, and even if you've never been to the opera before, you know this opera.
Absolutely. You know, so much of the music in this opera, particularly Figaro's second act aria, it's been used in commercials and you name it. So there's music in here everybody will know, and particularly the famous overture that has, again, been used in commercials and in just about any form. Now,
you talked about the less than formal nature of sideshow. So if you've not attended the opera before, what a shame, first of all. And in this beautiful, glamorous Opera House, opening night is very formal, is it not?
You know, it can be, and we do have a large percentage of our audience that do come out in gown and tuxedo, or at least really elegant cocktail attire, I would say. But I would encourage anybody who wants to come to the opera, whether you're coming on opening night or closing matinee, come to enjoy the opera. And if that means you're in a nice pair of jeans and a button-down shirt, that's fine with me. It's about you enjoying the experience of being here at the Opera House and the experience of an opera on the stage.
And no matter what seat you're able to get, because there are very limited opportunities to see this performance, there is no bad place to view the opera in this Opera House.
Absolutely. I think the beauty of this Opera House is not just the beauty that you see here, but the fact that you're never more than 117 feet from the stage in this space. And so immediately there's this sense of intimacy about this opera house that gives you a close-up feel to the stage.
Now that we know that no matter who we are, we should come and enjoy this beautiful performance, how did it become part of the season? How did you select The Marriage of Figaro?
Well, typically we always like to build the season around what we would call a blockbuster opera, an opera that we know has a significant popularity in the overall repertoire, but also an opera that that will be a major ticket sale for us, so that maybe one of the other productions in the season is a less popular piece that we won't expect to make quite as much money on in the ticket sales, so one helps pay for the other. Marriage of Figaro is certainly that blockbuster opera. You know, it amazes me that 226 years after it was written and premiered, this opera is still part of the top 10 pieces of repertoire that most often get performed by opera companies. And so I just felt that we haven't done it since 2005, and we just found just the right cast of exciting singers that are great actors as well, and this was the perfect time to open this season with it.
You mentioned the cast, and that's a perfect way to discuss one of the differences between opera and a musical theater or a theater, in that it's not really put together the same way that they are. So if you can help some of the viewers understand who drives the decisions when casting. Is it a director? Is it a producer? How does that work in the opera that's different?
Well, I'm pleased to say I get to make those decisions. My title is general director, but I'm also considered artistic director. But I have a wonderful person that I get to work with, Brad Trexel, who is our director of artistic operations. And Brad and I sit down and we sort of brainstorm different options for putting together a 3-opera season. And once we sort of get an idea of what are the opera titles we would like to do in that season, the next phase is really saying, what artists are out there that we would want to do these different roles in those various operas? And then what productions are available, either for rental, or do we want to build something new? Florencia en el Amazonas, our second opera of the season, is something we decided we wanted a whole new production of, and we're building here in Denver.
Wow.
So creating it from scratch,
that's
you might
really
say.
Ambitious. Very
ambitious, but very exciting, and we're co-producing that with Utah Opera. So they will own part of that production as well. But in the case of Marriage of Figaro, it's a rental set. We knew what that looked like. So then we just start putting our cast together. Brad and I went to New York and auditioned singers for it. Spent about 3 days, heard over 100 singers in 3 days, hearing the Countess's aria over and over again and Figaro's aria over and over again.
Did everybody audition with pieces from this opera?
They are required to when we go to New York and audition for very specific roles. We want to hear the actual repertoire from the opera so that we know that they will fit not only vocally the character, but body type and etc. So we begin to put it together through those auditions, and then typically say, okay, who's the kind of director that can bring a piece like Marriage of Figaro to life in the way that we want it done? Very keeping with the integrity of Mozart's ideas for the opera, but also making sure that it's a production that has a lot of life in it.
So that if you've seen it before and you're a regular patron of Opera Colorado, there's still something new and exciting to look forward to.
I always hope that no matter how many times you've seen any opera that we do, that your experience in the Opera House has a certain educational quality to it, so that, you know, you may have seen Figaro 10 times with other opera companies. However, you may walk away saying, you know, I never noticed that particular aspect of that opera, or I've never heard it sung that well. There's something there when you walk away has taken you to a new level of understanding or appreciation for that particular opera.
It's really telling that you mentioned that there should be an educational component to your experience at Opera Colorado, because you do have a deep educational component to your year-round program, and I'd love to come back and find out more about that at another time, but it shows that that carries right on through your entire philosophy as an organization.
Absolutely. From the minute that you open our program book, and you read the program notes or any of the articles that we put into Ovation, which is our news magazine, to you know, our pre-performance lectures that we do here in the Opera House, or afterwards, Brad and I gather anybody from the audience that wants to stay after the show, and we answer questions and talk about the experience that they just had. Those are all things that hopefully have an educational component to it and enhance the whole experience that the audience is having.
And in case we didn't mention it, or in case someone doesn't realize it, even though this opera is in Italian, you don't have to speak Italian to be able to access it.
Absolutely. You know, one of the modern marvels of the opera world, you might say, is the fact that we do have the Figaro titling system, strangely enough, called Figaro titling system. But it's a wonderful LED system that you see on the seats here that just scrolls the English translation right in front of you, and it also does it in Spanish. We do it in 2 languages here.
And you select it
and
just
you
right
can
there
just
at your seat.
push the button once for English, twice for Spanish. But we could do up to 7 different languages at the same time on this system.
And it's not distracting at all. It sounds like it might be, but having experienced it, you can turn it off if you don't feel like you want it.
Exactly.
But it's not something you have to focus on like a subtitled movie.
No, I like the system because you can just glance at it when you want to, whereas the old way of doing it, which we had in Betcher Concert Hall and Buell Theater, is a huge sort of screen over top of the proscenium. We always called them super titles. And you know, it's scrolled across in a text up there, and depending on where you're sitting in the house, you could be sort of bobbing up and down trying to look at the stage, and here it's a nice sort of eye line view to the stage, and you just glance at it.
We can hear the orchestra getting ready to rejoin their rehearsal.
Right.
And that brings me to a very interesting component of this show, is that your conductor is someone of intimate connection to Opera Colorado. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. John Barile has actually been our chorus master since 2003. And he's somebody I've known since the early 90s. He and I worked together at Central City.
You didn't have to admit that out loud.
Yes, when I was 10 years old. But you know, he and I worked together at Central City. I was a young artist up there, and he was at that time assistant chorus master and there at Central City. Now he's music director there, and I have just been trying to find the right piece for John to make his debut here at Opera Colorado, and I think he does Mozart so beautifully, what I've seen him do at Central City, and I said this is the perfect opportunity for him to make a debut, but also open the season.
So even though he's been able to conduct operas all over the place, this is his first time doing it for his own Opera Colorado.
Right, exactly, and we're thrilled.
So many reasons to make sure that we get to come and see this in one of the 2 weekends that are here, and I really appreciate you stealing time away as you're preparing for the production to tell us about it.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Now on to the Tattered Cover, where I meet with the cast and director of The Marriage of Figaro at Opera Colorado. Thank you all so much for staying after this really fun event at the Tattered Cover to talk to us about this production of The Marriage of Figaro. And I understand that all of you are new to Opera Colorado, all the singers are new to Opera Colorado, save you.
Yes. I've been here 5 years ago for Elisir d'Amore.
And what was that like? Obviously it was a good experience, you wanted to come back.
It was a very funny show, and I was playing, again, a kind of an Italian guy, Dulcamara, coming on a Italian motorcycle.
How did you get cast as an Italian guy? I don't understand.
I don't know. It's crazy.
And the 3 of you are singing here with Opera Colorado for the first time. Have you sung in Colorado at all before?
I have not. This is my first time.
I gave a recital at the university 5 years ago.
So you had sort of a hint, the 2 of you had a hint of what you were facing when you come here to perform, meaning our altitude.
Yes,
you spoke earlier about the altitude surprise, you called it. How are you all coping with that?
I got my high altitude training actually at Central City and in Aspen, so this is kind of nice.
This is easier.
Yeah.
What did you do there?
I did a Jake Heggie piece called 3 Decembers 2 summers ago in Central City, and then Aspen, that was many years ago, 1999. We did Così fan tutte and Ariadne auf Naxos. I was still in school at the time. So.
Well, welcome to Colorado and welcome back to Colorado for those of you who have been here before. And you've directed for Opera Colorado before, is that correct?
I have. This is my 3rd production for Opera Colorado, and I also was kind of a regular at Central City for many years. So I always say you don't actually acclimate to the altitude here. You just get used to being out of breath. It's a totally different thing.
Actually, the people who live here say that too, but we just don't tell anyone. It's like people who live in Seattle, it doesn't really rain all the time. It just mists. They don't tell anyone. That sort of secret. The Marriage of Figaro, it's sort of like a sequel to The Barber of Seville in many ways. And if we liken The Barber of Seville to a sitcom, sometimes this could be more like a romantic comedy because it's a little bit less reliant on the on the physical, broad comedy that you spoke about in the talkback. I'd like you to expand on that for our viewers who weren't here.
When I create the Marriage of Figaro, I always talk about how I have to create a world where we can do the light and the dark, where we can have this outrageous kind of comedy, because there are some very, very funny things that happen in the Marriage of Figaro. But on the other hand, we have to have a world where we can believe the people enough that when they have a serious moment, like the Countess's aria or the Count's aria, or everybody has an introspective moment, that we don't feel like we're suddenly being jarred into another world, but that it's all part of this experience. So yeah, it's much more of a romantic comedy about which has serious parts and very funny parts as well.
I think that's a way for people who have never really given opera a chance to figure out what it is. It's not the lady with the Viking horns and the spear. There's so much more to opera. So if you as the artists were talking to our viewers, trying to allay their fears or even tempt them to come and see the Marriage of Figaro because they know it whether they know it or not, they know this opera, how would you describe it? What would you say to entice them to come and see it?
These are very real emotions. Everything that we go through on stage, we are feeling within, and sometimes all you can do is sing about it.
I think that's a brilliant description because so many people who have never given opera a try think it's only huge, broad, operatic moments, not real people and real emotions. Would any of you else have something else to add to that?
No, it's true. It's about feelings, and so it's. I hope that we will be able to show this to the audience. We are really enjoying it. We are having a lot of fun on stage, but what is compelling is the fact that we really are forced to push our limit and to try to leave the situations at the full level.
Figaro is also one of the handful of operas that everyone in the audience will be able to find themselves on stage.
Well, I think that's a great point.
Because we're this huge ensemble, and we represent every bit of the spectrum of humanity, really. And there will be somebody up there where they can say, hey, that's kind of me. That person is having my experience and relate to it that way.
Did you have another way to tempt people to come? He's going to pass again.
As in a lot of opera, there's a lot of love and sex and conflict. I mean, there's all sorts of things you find on reality TV that are happening, and so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, it's like reality television with talent.
This actually, putting it down to a sort of bottom level is all about sex. I mean, every person has a sexual motivation in this piece, and it's what actually drives a lot of the characters is their passion and their feeling for their sexual pursuits.
Which is a very human existence, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a brilliant way to tempt people to come to see the Marriage of Figaro. It's all about sex.
It is. No sex happens on stage, but it is all about sex.
Either backstage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that also, I think a lot of people have a preconceived notion about what opera and opera singers, the artists who bring us opera, are like. And you're all very different than that sort of stereotype of what an opera singer is. You're relaxed, you're fun. And do you find that that's the case when people have never come to the opera before? They're surprised? Or do you think that not many people give them a chance? How do you think the general public perceives opera?
Well, one thing that I've noticed is that when we're doing comedy is that people are often afraid to laugh.
Oh.
You have people that are, maybe don't know the etiquette in terms of, how they should maybe not unwrap their candy or, stuff like that. But there are people that think they have to be so respectful that they can't laugh at something that's funny.
Because it's such high art.
And they think like, oh, what's happening? And like, it's funny. Laugh at it.
Yeah. You're up there trying to entertain them. It's not just a distant piece of art. So because you're trying to entertain them, how do you describe the Marriage of Figaro?
You have a slide rule?
It's one crazy day, and just about anything that you could imagine happening happens. There's intrigue and drama and thoughtfulness and cross-dressing. I mean, it's just throw everything into the mix and add Mozart. And that's the brilliance that we're looking at for a fun evening.
I think that's the commercial right there. Now, even if someone hasn't attended Opera Colorado before, this will be a piece, there's lots of the music that they'll recognize. It's really accessible and it's used in so many venues. So how do you as artists, if you've created this role a myriad of times or for the first time, honor that experience that the audience is bringing? They're familiar with the music, yet they don't know the story at all.
As we said already, it's everything about feelings, so we just have to live those experiences, and I hope that then, you know, this will be transmitted to the audience that is watching our performance, you know.
Is it something to overcome that they're familiar with the music and not the story?
I think it's a huge asset that you know, in 4 hours, a moment will come along that they can go, hey, or hey, or isn't that a Bugs Bunny thing? Or,
even the very beginning, that music at the very beginning.
Yes.
Everybody.
I think it's a huge help. David, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you know, it's even more vivid in like Barber of Seville because you know, when he starts singing Figaro, 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 and all that stuff, the audience chuckles because they have that experience with Bugs Bunny and all of that too. And it's fun to hear it. I mean, it's kind of like being at a Frank Sinatra concert when he starts the song and they all know it and so they applaud. It's not quite that same idea, but familiarity is fun.
Have any of you worked together before?
I've worked with everybody except Twyla.
I've worked with Keith.
So how did you come together as a cast, as a company? Did they select the director first and you cast them? How did that work?
No, I think actually probably some of these people were hired before I was. In the opera world, it's really the producer, the general director, who does the casting and the choosing of how the production all gets put together. And then we all arrive, and it's very different for a director who is directing a play and has total say in how it's going to be cast, or directing a movie.
I mean, you don't have total say in how?
I have no say. I did have one tiny bit of say. I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say that they did call me because they had a cancellation in the role of Susanna. And I said, I know a young lady who is really terrific, and you should use her as Susanna. And they hired Ava Pine on my recommendation. But that's kind of unusual.
It's kind of unusual.
It usually happens that, you know, they do the casting, and sometimes the director might even be the last person brought into the process.
Wow. And Ava, that gave you the opportunity to perform this role for your first time.
That's right.
And your first time at Opera Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we learned when we met the young artists of Opera Colorado that the way we wish the artists in opera luck is to say toy, toy, toy. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's one of them, yes.
Well,
It's
Yes,
one of
one
them.
of them.
Oh, well, tell me another. How else do you wish luck?
do
Instead
you
of
say
break
it
a
in
leg
Well,
or...
in Italian is in bocca al lupo, that literally is in the mouth of the wolf. And the answer is crepi lupo, may the wolf die. So it's not very nice for the poor wolf. But
And in French, they say merde.
Merde. Well, that's what they say in ballet. Do they say that in opera also?
yeah,
I'll simply say merde then, so I don't mispronounce.
in bocca al lupo.
In bocca al lupo.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't miss Opera Colorado's season opener. Visit operacolorado.org for ticket information. Here's another glimpse of their production of The Marriage of Figaro. Here's a glimpse of what's coming up on In Focus. Today is Colorado Ballet's first flying rehearsal for their new production, Peter Pan. This is a regional premiere. So next week, we'll have a chance to sit down with the choreographer, Michael Pink. We'll also chat with Gil Boggs, the artistic director of Colorado Ballet, to find out all about this production and how they brought it to Colorado. We'll also meet with the dancers playing Tinkerbell, Wendy, and of course, Peter Pan. So join us next week as we take you behind the scenes for Peter Pan at Colorado Ballet. This is just a glimpse of their very first flying rehearsal, which they held at the studio loft space at the Ellie Caulkins Opera House. The entire company is excited to bring this original, full-length work to Denver audiences. Don't miss Peter Pan at Colorado Ballet. Visit coloradoballet.org for ticket information and tune in next week to see our behind-the-scenes visit. Miners Alley Playhouse gives us another look at the world of opera later this month as they present Terrence McNally's Masterclass. It centers around the life and work of Maria Callas. It begins on February 24th. Visit minersalley.com for ticket information. Later, we'll take you to the galleries at the Arvada Center for a retrospective of Colorado artist Robert Mangold. We'll talk to the curator about this exhibit and his childhood connection to the artist. We also have a visit with the artist himself to learn about his life, his work, and the intersection of science, math, and art. This sweeping retrospective is just one of 3 impressive exhibits currently at the galleries. And the Arvada Center is still offering special talkbacks with the artists. Visit arvadacenter.org for more information about this free exhibit.
That's all for this edition. Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. With all that Colorado has to offer, we're here to help you keep it in focus. Thanks for watching. Good night.